Hello and welcome to the Walk Around podcast, powered by JM&A Group, coming to you live and in person.
Well, kind of live.
Kind of live in a brand new studio. So we're excited about that, and we're even more excited to welcome this guest, Scott Livingston. I am your host, Mark Spoto, joined as always by Elliot Shore.
Hey now.
And Scott Livingston is he is a renowned leadership coach and business consultant. He has his own Livingston Consulting Group business, and he joined us to talk about a variety of things that will help anyone listening improve their personal development, their growth in their career. We talked about delivering feedback. We talked about controlling emotions.
Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. We learned that your favorite leadership quote of all time is not exactly aligned with Scott's.
No.
But we talked about a lot of things. So I think it was a great conversation. What do you think?
I mean, it was, I want to listen back to this one a couple of times because there's a lot of tidbits that I need to make sure I absorb.
He's really great with acronyms too.
Really good.
So very, very actionable ideas that you can take away in your business, in your departments, for your teams. We hope you enjoy it. Let's take a walk around with Scott Livingston right after this. Scott, welcome to the Walk Around podcast. This is an exciting moment for us.
Very
because
exciting.
We are debuting our new studio. We've really leveled up our game here.
It's a little intimidating.
It's a little intimidating. So what perfect person to help us get through that intimidating moment.
And coach us through. Yes.
Than Scott Livingston. Scott, welcome to the Walk Around. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. I'm super excited.
Yeah, so we thought we would start off with kind of your journey to where you are today as a leadership coach, as a consultant, as a business advisor. How did you get to where you are? Give the listeners and some audience some perspective on where you are today.
Sure. So I grew up in Peoria, Illinois, which used to be the market research capital of the world.
Really?
Because of the diversity that existed in Peoria with industry and lots of socioeconomic places. So I'm dating myself when I'm giving that fact a bit, and then I went to pharmacy school actually. At Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and had a wonderful experience there, and started my career actually as a retail pharmacist.
Wow.
And did that for a few years, and then was recruited by Eli Lilly to come work with them on their commercial side of the business. And so I did lots of different roles: sales, marketing, market research, and ended up, did sales management for a while, and then ended up in a leadership development role where we were responsible for developing leaders, and we put a curriculum together in the company for that. And I fell in love with this model of emotional intelligence at that many years ago. And we just started using it as a foundational aspect to develop leaders in our business. And I had some people from some other companies come to me and say, "Hey, could you come do that at our company?" And I said, "No, I kind of work for these guys over here, But then I just saw market opportunity, and I thought, I really love this. I love helping leaders with their becoming better at what they do. And so I just decided to invest my life and my career in that, and quickly realized when I started my own business that it was going to be in my best interest to pursue a doctoral degree. It was going to give a lens of credibility that I was looking for. And so I did that at Indiana Wesleyan. So now I teach a little, I coach some. And I really come up alongside of business leaders and help them take a look at what their leadership looks like. And if they like it, I think it's great. And if there are
Yeah.
changes they want to make, I help them support those changes.
Yeah, no, it's great. I like hearing your story. One thing, the audience should really know is that, Scott's being very humble here. Scott really is an expert in emotional intelligence, and Mark and I have been fortunate enough to experience that firsthand over a number of years. Scott hasn't personally helped
both of us
with our careers in terms of emotional intelligence, and it's been a wonderful journey. And
not just our careers, I would say, made us better people.
Oh, husbands, fathers.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's one of the things we just love and adore about you, Scott, is the way you take such a human approach, a emotional intelligence approach to what you do. And it's fascinating, especially in the auto industry, and it's funny to hear coming from pharmaceuticals. And I guess, wanting to go back a second and was curious, that first transition you made from, a pharmacist working, I would imagine, at a CVS or, Walgreens or some sort of pharmacy,
Yeah.
And going into a big corporation. You study for a long time, I would imagine, with some path in your head. And then all of a sudden that first, gyration of your career happens. And so how was that for you in terms of, your confidence going from a pretty standard, hey, prescription comes in, I fill it.
Sure. Right.
To a much more dynamic, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, but how is that transition for you? Because it's a transition I think a lot of our audience goes through.
Yeah, it's a big change.
Yep.
So how do you process that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I actually think it's an emotional intelligence question, because they're back when I was working as a retail pharmacist, the model was that we took orders from doctors and we filled them. Basically, is what happened, right, for a patient. And then when I shifted into industry, my job became to influence a physician with data, with science. Wow. The idea was with science, but to help them make better decisions for their patients. And so a certain level, I think, of confidence is needed. A certain level of assertiveness is needed, but you have to balance those things with empathy. Because, in this idea of emotional intelligence, if you're not balancing your confidence level with care and compassion for the people you're trying to serve, then it gets out of whack. Right. And so I think of it like a tire. So, in the automobile industry, it's a tire. And if the tire is properly inflated, it just rolls down the road of life pretty easy.
Right.
But what happens for some of us is we get too much air in one part of a tire and not enough air in another. So we become overconfident and don't have enough empathy to offset it. So we go kerplunk. Not all the time, just sometimes in certain situations or contexts. And so I think that for any young person who's mid-career person who's making a transition, I think it's really thinking about things like your confidence, like your assertiveness, your empathy, your impulse control, how you tolerate and manage stress. All of those things in balance will help you become the person you want to become. Out of balance, now that's where we start to get into trouble, right? That's where the issues start to pop up for us.
Yeah, and Scott, I think you're making a fantastic point about balance. And, in the automotive world, it's a high stress, high pressure, deadline, metrics driven environment.
Yeah.
So, how could you share with our listeners some ways that you can help manage those emotions or avoid those triggers that I'm sure so many of our listeners deal with on a regular basis?
Sure. Yeah. The idea of a trigger is that when I pull it, it sets off an explosion
Yeah.
of some degree or another, right?
Right. I always think of the classic Mike Tyson fight as like the classic trigger, what was it, Evander Holyfield, it wasn't just that he all of a sudden stopped being a boxer and bit someone's ear. Well, there were triggers leading up to that, and it resulted in that explosion.
Right.
But
yeah.
Sorry,
So
continue. Yep.
we all have levels of stress, and stress is actually a good thing. So the environment, Mark, you were just talking about, that in the automotive industry, a certain amount of stress actually helps us perform. It's when the stress crosses a line and becomes anxiety or becomes fear that will start to inhibit performance. So a lot of times, you will see athletes talk about being in a zone.
Right.
Yeah.
The same is true for executives. It's being able just to know and be in the zone. And so knowing my triggers,
right, is
self-awareness is where all of this starts. So that if I know, I'll give you an example from my own life. So when I was in the pharmaceutical world, I had a high travel job, and I would leave on a Monday and generally wouldn't get home until a Thursday or a Friday. I did that job for about 18 months or 2 years. High stress job, working with people, dealing with medicine, pharmaceuticals. So when I got home on a Thursday or a Friday afternoon, I was spent. I was tired. Like my stress tolerance, my ability to handle more stress was gone. When I walk in the door, we had 3 small children, my wife and I, 3 small children at the time. My wife would start in, like, do you know what your son did at school? Like, well, no, but I'm sure I'm about to hear it, right?
Right.
The point here is I wasn't ready. So it's a trigger.
Right.
If I walk in the house and I start getting dumped on, right, then I'm going to trigger, and it's not going to go well for either party involved.
For sure.
We developed what we call shoe time. I walked in, we exchanged pleasantries. I went upstairs, changed my shoes, came back downstairs, and that meant I'm ready to engage.
That's like the reverse of Mr. Rogers. Taking off your shoes and then ready to go, as opposed to, all right, putting on my shoes, it's time to go.
So the idea is actually quite similar. So now I'm ready and I'm willing and I'm able to engage. Here's the thing: you can't stay upstairs all night. You got to come back down. Right.
No, you have to shift gears, or change that gear. And it's interesting, I've observed a lot of dealer associates who very high confidence, right? It's sort of a trait of the
to be successful in this world, to Scott's point, you got to enjoy this stress to a certain extent.
Correct. And to be a salesperson you have to have a certain amount of confidence. Right. And it's very interesting, seeing, you're right. The dealership environment is very high stress, but it's also high stress because you're dealing with you're working with the general public who is already a bit apprehensive about the process, about the experience they're going to have. And that often can lead to certain explosive situations in customers.
Sure.
And so, going to coaching, and thinking of coaching, and, there's definitely the self, right? But, what would be some strategies? How do you, when you see someone else reaching those triggers, when you can start to sense them, whether it's a customer or a colleague or
someone on your
team, friend, a family member, how do you go about diffusing that?
Yeah.
How do you help them get through those moments?
So I think there are two parts of that. The first part happens before the moment ever occurs. And is the person getting enough sleep? What's their diet look like, right? What's their exercise routine? So all of those things matter. And there's now a tremendous amount of science that says that, in fact, Gabor Mate just published his new book called The Myth of Normal, where he actually starts to link disease processes to how we have been treating our bodies over the last 30 or 40 years. So there's that piece. Like, I can give you short-term hacks, but if you're not taking care of the front end, the short-term hacks are only going to be that short-term hacks. Right.
So hangry is a real thing.
Hangry is it's very real. In fact, I talk about a model that I call halts. So it's like you come to a stop, halts, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and sick. Any of those will put you at risk for these triggering moments. So if you're not paying attention to that, Mark, to your point earlier on, you're going to trigger. Right. So if you're working in a dealership and it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you might have had a muffin on your way to work, right, at 7, right, and you haven't had any food in your body, and a sales associate brings you a number that you're not like, there's no way we're doing this deal, right? It's like, you're going to trigger.
Right.
You're going to trigger. So point one, take care of yourself up front. Yep. Point number 2, I talk about a model that if you realize you're triggered or you're going to trigger, I use the acronym STOP, S-T-O-P, right? The S is just stop. Psychologists call it pattern interrupt. So if you're standing, sit. If you're sitting, cross your arms. Do something to break the emotional cycle that you're feeling. It doesn't have to be much.
You're saying doing something physically in that moment.
Physical. You've seen people wear the bands and they snap themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
really,
like take a rubber band and snap yourself, but it's pattern interrupt. What we have to do is stop our mind from going down a vortex of emotion it can't get itself out of.
Wow.
The T in the acronym is take a deep breath. So a deep cleansing breath. There you go.
We had to do that.
That feels good.
When we first sat down in our studio.
When we walked on here, we were like, "Wow, this is intense. This is intense."
Okay, so take a breath.
So take a breath. So what that does is that oxygen actually stimulates chemicals in your brain and relaxes you and helps you to be more in the moment and be focused.
Going back to the athlete analogy, you see that a lot in terms of, especially a basketball player at the free throw line, and there's a pressure situation.
Right.
That deep breath is definitely part of their routine.
Definitely notice that with golfers.
With golfers, absolutely.
Before they take a putt, you see them take that deep breath in. Yep.
So naturally, what is happening in our brain is we're speeding up our world, right? What that deep breath does is slows your world down. That allows you to be present and in the moment. If you're cycled up, the one thing you're not is present.
For sure. And you can't manage yourself and your impact on others if you're not present in the moment.
Right.
So the key, Elliot, then you just said it, the O in the model is become others focused. What does the person in front of me need? This associate that just brought me this bad deal. what do they need? Do they really need me to take their head off in the moment?
Right.
It's not going to help anything. It's not going to help anything.
All right,
Right?
audience, we see you shaking your heads.
Yeah.
That's not the answer.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yes,
right? We've
for
all
sure.
been there.
We're human, right? We've all been there. And but what does that person need from me to be able to go make the deal? That's the point, right? Well, don't
Right.
lose focus on the outcome here. And then the P in the model is part of the being empathic, and it's to propose a question.
Mhm.
Questions calm people down. Statements trigger people.
Right.
So asking the associate a question, what do you think your best next step is better than go out there and make the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
That is
telling
such a
them to
great
go make the
point.
deal triggers them.
Right.
Now what you've done is you've passed your trigger on to another human
Right.
who now is going to go trigger the customer.
Right.
Why do we have bad experiences? Because we're triggering customers.
Right.
How do we help clients feel, not think, feel that we have empathy? We used to think you can't sell with empathy. It's a huge myth.
Right.
It's actually a way to repeat customer business.
Hmm.
You want somebody to come back for service? Show them that you care.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think there's an important point there where the evolution of the sales process is the idea that it's a battle between a customer and a salesperson
Right.
really has evolved over the years,
Yes.
right? And I think what you're saying, Scott, is showing care, showing concern, being on that customer's side will make a difference.
Yeah, and I love too how how you highlight the importance of self-care in order to care for others.
Yeah.
And that dynamic between taking care of yourself will enable you to better take care of others. Because we've seen some of the lifestyles out there in the retail world. It's tough. It's a tough industry. It's a 6-day a week, 12-hour day industry, and it's tough to make that time for yourself.
That's right.
Does that time for yourself have to be, can it be as simple as taking a breath? Like I know you just said it, but can it be that simple, for our skeptics in the audience?
I think it can be. I think at least to practice not passing my emotional position onto another person. So
Right.
as leaders, as managers and leaders, we need to keep the big picture in mind.
Mhm.
And what is it that we're really trying to do here? And I don't want to put any kind of judgment on anybody. Every business has to decide for itself what it's really trying to do here. But at the end of the day, having customers feeling like they had a good experience is what it's all about.
So, Scott, I want to switch gears a little bit now. And you mentioned kind of the role of the manager, of the role of the leader. So often we hear about motivation and what does it take to create a high performing, engaged team. And traditionally, I think we've talked about in the car business, that comes down to pay plans, right? And does money really cure all things?
That's so right. We've heard that a lot. People are their pay plan,
Right. So, Scott, can you share with us some of your thoughts on motivation for teams and what really drives a person to perform at a high level, to be engaged? Where does money really shape? We've talked with others on the podcast,
Yep.
and I think we've heard to despite the emphasis on pay plans, it's really not high on a person's list when it comes down to the basics.
Yeah. It's not high on their list. And there are countless examples of people working for less pay because they want to follow a leader who is engaging, who shows compassion, who has a vision, who allows me, the fancy term is self-actualize, to become the person I want to become. And that's what drives people. So Mark, I think what we're talking about here is the difference between an extrinsic and an intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivations are pay plans, and they are motivating. Pay plans are motivating, and but you're only pulling on one thread of the emotional string, the motivation string. The other is what's intrinsic for that person, right? So here's an example. I'm coaching a person right now who is in the insurance industry, not automotive, life insurance. And this person is extremely well compensated, and feels like he is working with handcuffs on. He was hired in to do a job that had meaning and purpose, and to take a business somewhere, and someone in the C-suite pulled the funding. He's handcuffed. He's got money. Money is not the motivator. He has enough. It's the intrinsic. So businesses have expense lines for salaries, and they're not infinite. So pay usually will become, at some point, it will find its equilibrium with what the market will allow it to be.
Sure.
So now, if that's true, why do people leave? You can't throw more money at them. You don't have it.
Right.
I've always thought a big factor is the relationship with your manager.
Well, that's the intrinsic.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what, the saying is, people don't quit companies, they quit bosses.
Right.
And that, I think you're speaking exactly to that. It's not the pay plan they're quitting. It's the self-actualization, if I got that right.
That's right.
Good job.
I learn sometimes.
You're listening.
So they've lost their meaning and purpose. Like, I want to be able to achieve and learn this craft, and maybe someday be a finance manager.
Right.
Well, what's my path? If I have a path to that, I might actually work for less money in the short term to be able. So I think there is this extrinsic, intrinsic motivation, but so many times organizations only pull the extrinsic lever.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it really is. There's multi-dimensions to motivation. And make sure we're focusing on all of them. That's great.
Scott, another topic we wanted to cover, in a role as a manager or a leader, is delivering feedback. And sometimes that can be a dreaded moment, both for the manager and the person receiving the feedback.
Right. Or sometimes people actually love delivering the feedback in a negative way.
Well, in some cases, as soon as you say the word feedback, it's almost like
a trigger.
I need to prepare myself for a slap in the face. Right. And it's a trigger, going back to what we were saying.
Right.
So, Scott, in the people that you've coached and you advise, what are some strategies or ways that you think work best when it comes to delivering feedback? And whether that be in the moment or in a performance review, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure, Mark. I think it all depends on if you want your feedback to stick or not.
I think we do.
I would say we do, right?
If you want it to stick, then it has to be delivered in a means where the person's stress tolerance is low enough that they can receive it.
Interesting.
So feedback is actually a three-part process. It's seeking it out, being able to receive it, and then being able to do something with it. Someone who's received feedback, it maybe has been sought out for them, and we've said it, so we think they've received it. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Interesting.
How do you test whether someone received it or not? You help them put a plan together so that they can implement and maybe make a change that you're asking them to make. And then
I think what you're saying, Scott, is, again, it's part of showing care, right? You're not just delivering a message or telling them a criticism.
Yeah.
You're actually talking about how are we going to work on this together. It's showing that care.
How are we going to make this better? How can we help you achieve your meaning and purpose in life? How does this message help you do that and get better at that?
Yes, you're showing them a path to success. Right? There's a practical element in there too of, I care about you, and here's how you can be successful.
Yeah.
And that's it's a whole different thing than saying, hey, you got to work on your presentation skills.
Right.
I'll see you next week.
Yeah. And going back to that in the moment piece, Scott, you mentioned identifying if that person is ready to be receptive to the feedback. So that's an important part of it, right? Maybe you use kind of a 24-hour rule, or you got to look at the situation before you deliver.
Mark, I think it's right. I think if the person's safety is at risk, or we're about to make a really bad business decision, then feedback in the moment is the right thing. Or I think the other thing that you can watch for is it a teachable moment? Right. Is the person that I'm working with in the frame of mind that they're teachable?
Yep.
Right? If we're in the midst of a high-stake negotiation, this might not be the teachable moment.
Right.
It might be 24 hours later where the moment is teachable. I think for the key that I would have leaders focus on is, if what I'm actually after is a different behavior from the person I'm coaching, their psychological safety and their ability to be able to digest my feedback is way more important than what I'm about ready to say.
Yeah, no, that's
so I want people.
I love that. I think that's such a great insight, because I know personally, I tend to focus on what I need to say, not the state of mind
of the person
I'm delivering it to. What a great insight, because I know I will certainly take that one back. As always, Dr. Livingston, we tend to learn a lot.
We learn a lot from
having conversations with you.
Yeah, so you guys, I would even say, for those listening to your podcast, because you said a lot of people listen to it on their drive into work.
Yep.
Right?
People assume.
You assume.
Maybe there's at least one. I know my father listens on the way in.
Well, thank you, Mr. Spoto.
Let's just talk about your dad for a minute, right? It's not a bad thing to be listening on your way to work. But what are you faced with when you're driving to work? Traffic.
Yeah.
Right.
How well are you really listening?
It's passive.
Passive.
So the same is true with feedback. How well is the person really listening? Or is there so much noise in their head that they go and do the same behavior the next day, and you're like, I just told them about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they not hear me? Yeah, no, actually they didn't.
Right.
So Scott, I think what you're saying is our listeners, if you're listening to us driving in, pause it, focus on the traffic, and listen to this when you're at your office or you're going for a walk.
So you can absorb it.
So you can absorb it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So Scott.
Listen and re-listen. That's what I would say. Listen and re-listen.
Exactly.
Love it. Love it.
We want to transition now to a segment that we like to call a sure thing. And I'm really excited for this because I have a feeling, Scott, you were prepared and you're prepped and ready. You don't know what Elliot's going to throw out at you, but I'm sure you are ready to respond with whatever that might be. And Elliot, you've thought about some things that we could toss out at Scott, and he can tell us, sure thing or not a sure thing.
Yeah, no, we definitely had some fun putting this together, as we always do. So it's definitely, and I'm now adjusting. People, I guess, can see me. I have a piece of paper.
Yeah, who cares? You got some paper.
It's all good.
We got a fern between us. It doesn't really matter.
At least it's not two ferns that we're in between.
Right. It's not the two ferns. It's the one fern.
One fern
in between us.
That's right. But there's a lot of leadership quotes out there. A lot. I mean, you could scroll LinkedIn. There's no shortage of people posting quotes about leadership. And there's a lot of great ones out there. And I know, Scott, you're an avid reader, you're an avid learner. But I have a quote that I believe is the single best leadership quote of all time.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, and it is attributed to Buddha, who is the author of the quote. And this single best quote that I have actually hanging in my office is, "Let the past make you better, not bitter." Sure thing or not a sure thing? Best leadership quote of all time.
Quote of all time.
Of all time.
Well, it is Buddha, so it has been around.
I went way
time.
Way back.
I mean, we are almost talking definitely centuries.
So what he's saying is there has been no quote better than that one.
Nothing.
In the history of mankind since Buddha. Sure thing or not a sure thing, Scott?
I would have to say not a sure thing.
Okay. I was hoping you would say that.
Oh, well, thank you, Mark.
Do you have a favorite quote, Scott, that you'd like to share?
Well, I almost feel like I need to come back with a religious quote after that, like love your neighbor as yourself or something like that, right? But
Can I share mine while you think, Scott?
Yes. Please
so
do.
You mentioned Mike Tyson earlier. My favorite leadership quote is, "Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face."
That's a classic. That's
classic, right?
It's a great one.
That's a good
All right,
one.
Scott, do you have a quote or you want us to move on to the next?
I think I would quote Peter Drucker,
Okay.
management guru, who said the task of leadership is to create an alignment of strengths in a way that makes a system's weakness irrelevant. So
Teamwork.
Teamwork. So we all
Absolutely.
have systems or systems, right? And systems are going to break down at some level. But a strong team can overcome any system. So I think it's a good one for leaders to think through.
That's great.
Love it.
All right, Elliot, 0 for 1.
Okay.
Oh, for one.
All right. So we're gonna get a little fun here with you. So we know you live in Orlando.
I do.
And there's a lot of theme parks in Orlando. And
You're a big theme park guy, right, Scott? Do we have that right?
Yeah, not so much.
So much. Okay. We were thinking of somebody else. But go with it. Go with it.
okay. Well, thanks for asking that.
I love the theme park companies. So there you go. I love the organization.
Okay.
He's worked with the theme park companies. Good enough.
Fair enough.
Good
okay.
enough. Good
Okay.
enough.
So there's a lot of fictional characters out there that we can learn something from. And Mark and I were running through some of the Disney characters, the Universal characters.
As we often do. We talk about Disney characters.
And there's one that comes to mind for me that is the single best fictional character that you can learn from of all time. Being that we're Orlando themed, although kind of took the wind out of that. But
Yeah.
I believe that Yoda is the single most fictional character that we can all learn something from. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
What would you have us learn from Yoda?
What I always loved about Yoda was his humility and his ability to say very succinct words that mean the right thing at the right time, and his ability to teach.
Yeah. It's a sure thing and not a sure thing at the same time.
He almost gave you
I
credit.
get half credit.
And then he took it away.
That's half. No, I think that's 0.5.
All right, that's 0.5.
I love the Cheshire Cat in the story of Alice in Wonderland. Because
Excellent.
Alice, for a leadership moment,
Alice
comes to a fork in the road, and the cat is sitting in the tree. And Alice is looking to her left and looking to her right. And the cat looks down at her and says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Of course, Scott is going to drop such a philosophical reference.
That was amazing.
That was great.
That was. I'm taking away my half credit. No credit for me.
Thank you.
No
Credit. All right, let's try
great.
to finish strong. 0 for 2. Hit him with the third one.
Okay, so I know you're an avid golfer, and you know we're golf fans as well. And we're in the mix.
And we're terrible.
We're
golfers.
really bad golfers.
I'm with you.
We have fun.
We do. We love it.
We have fun.
We love it.
And so as an avid golfer, we're in the midst of golf season here. We were talking about the best golf tournaments that we enjoy, and I guess this is a bit of a layup here, but maybe not. We'll see. I tend to believe that the Masters is the best tournament of all time. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
What do you think, Scott?
I would say you said tournament.
Tournament, yes.
So not golf course.
Not
right.
course.
I might actually give you a sure thing.
All right.
We got one out of you. Finally.
You finished strong.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Not the best hole, not the best course, but best tournament. I think.
Yes.
I think your language was spot on.
What would be your best course if you had to name one?
Well, St. Andrews probably. Just from history, and best hole is 17 at TPC Sawgrass. I think.
Yeah, that's the best.
Although I think the Phoenix Open, the 16 at the Phoenix Open is becoming. It's not a hard hole, but it's just party. So there's that.
Right. Well, it also, what is it? 17 on Pebble Beach.
Yeah,
that one's iconic. Yeah, iconic.
Yeah. So
iconic. Well, one day I hope to play it with you, sir.
Yes.
And you too, Mark.
Thanks.
I would love that.
Scott, we can't thank you enough for joining us.
Scott,
we have learned a lot. Yeah, good question. If someone wants to reach out and find you and talk to you more about their own development, what's the best place that they can track you down?
The website is drscottlivingston.com. drscottlivingston.com.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have learned a ton. And I hope our audience did as well.
Yeah, and thank you, I think, personally as well, for being just such a great person and mentor to us. And we appreciate you.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime.
Thank you, Scott.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to us on The Walk Around. This podcast is produced by the team at the JM&A Group. Special thanks to Caitlin Swanson, James Gahn, and Michaela Gerritsen for helping us produce this episode and others. If you're a dealer owner, if you're a general manager, regardless of your career in automotive, you are sure to pick up some insights on The Walk Around.
I like what you did there.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's nice. And we appreciate all of our listeners. You can find us anywhere where you can find podcasts, Apple, Spotify. We're on YouTube, Spotify video now available. All you got to do, if you have an Alexa enabled device, you could just say, Alexa, play the walk around, and it will play. So we appreciate you. Remember to like, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you for listening.